Hey guys, welcome to Learning Perspective. This is Gary. Today we're going to be talking about serializers and deserializers. The object of a serializer and deserializer is to take an object that normally cannot be saved into a database or a file and be able to serialize it down and save it to a file or a database and be able to take it from that database and put it back into an object so you can use the object. And we all know objects are created so that you can organize data about a specific item in a place that makes it usable for you in your programming. So today we're going to work on one, just kind of show you what we're doing here with this drawing real quick. If we have an object and we call that object car, let's say, and now we take that object and we fill it with something. We're going to make this extremely simple if we can. We're going to have a string, and the string is going to be called make. Okay, so now we have an object car that contains a string called make. Now, out of that object, we would take and create a new instance of an object. Forgive my drawing, but this is the quickest way I could think to do this. So then we want to make car1, let's say, and car1 is an instance of car, and let's say we'll make equal to Chevy. Okay, pretty simple. But now you can imagine that you have car and it has all different types of things: the make, the model, the year, maybe the types of tires, the type of engine, transmission, windshield, body, suspension, whatever you want to add in. Okay, so now we have this object, and let's say that we put in all of this kind of information. Now we want to be able to save this to a database. So over here we have a database, and it's all ready, but we can't save an object to the database. So how do we make that object available in our database? Well, we do it with a string value or an nchar, and we're going to save our object as serialized code. So this will end up being our object string. Okay, so now we need to take an object, a complete object, and make it into a string in order to put it in the database. So our next step is to create something in order to be able to do that. Now, here's the catch. You can create the code easy enough to serialize this and put it in, but the object of our discussion today is going to be, what if we have more than one object we want to save, and what if they're not the same type of object? What if they're, what if we have one that's car, and maybe we have another one just the same, but this one is, let's say, the track, and then inside the track we have whatever information we want to save about the track. Okay, now we create a new track, and of course that's an instance of track, and the name has Island Dragway. Okay, so now we have two different objects. Now we would have to write the same code twice in order to convert our data into something that can be used by the database. And not only that, but then later on when we want to call this information back again, we would have to take something and go from this database to be able to get our objects back again. So we want to be able to read into the database, and then we also want to be able to read this back out into our objects again. So in order to be able to do that, we would have to rewrite the deserialization code twice. If you have more than one of these, then you're going to need some other way to take care of that. So we need to get something to go in between here. So we would need, on this side, we're going to need a serializer, and over on this side, we're going to need something to take it from that string and change it back into the object itself. So here we're going to need our deserializer. And basically, that's all you need to know as far as this little drawing I'm making goes. Now we would take each of these, and we take these objects, we want to put them into the serializer and have the serializer come out with some kind of text, which would be our object string. And obviously here we're going to come from our object string that we pull from our database, and we're going to go into here, and this is going to change it back into our object. So this is what we're going to create. We'll create one class that has a deserializer and a serializer, and this class will be able to take in any object. It doesn't have to be car, it doesn't have to be track, it can be any type of an object that you want, and the only way that you have to keep track of it is when you're sending your information into the database, you need to know what type of an object it is to send into the serializer, and when you're getting the information back, you're going to need to know, tell the deserializer what type of an object you're using. So let's get started with coding. We're just going to create a new project, and we'll just make it a blank universal app, and you call it whatever you like, and we'll create that. Okay, and once our project is created, then we'll start with our main page XAML. And this is going to be just a really simple example of a front end for your program. Obviously, you can use this for any type of a program. Just to show our example, we're going to take a button, we're going to put it in, and we're going to take 2 text boxes, okay? And I don't even care about labels or anything right now. I think you'll be able to see what we need to see with them. The only thing that I do want to do is shrink this down a little bit. Okay, I just want to make sure my text wrapped. Okay, I don't really care where it is in the box or whatever. I don't even care what the button says. All I care about is naming the button properly so that we know how to do this. Now, in this case, button's fine. Here we're going to make this one, and we're going to call this one JSON. And you'll understand why in a moment. And this one we're going to call, actually we should do TB so we know it's the text box, object results. Change this one to TB JSON. That's pretty much it. We don't need anything in our boxes. So we can take our text out. We can save that and close that, and that's the last we're going to deal with that. Now, the next step is to go to our background code. Oh, I'm sorry, you do have to mess with that one more time. Just double click on your button. That'll bring up your background code for you, and it'll give you your initializer for your button. And here's where we're going to run our code for our serializer and our deserializer. So before we get into this, I think it'll make more sense to create the serializer and deserializer so that you'll understand what we're putting into it. So for right now, we can close our XAML main page. We won't be touching that part anymore. Just leave this part open. Now we're just going to go and create a new class. Add class. And here is where we're going to build our serializer. We'll just call this Serialize. We have a new class. We want to make it public. And in here, we're going to make 2 classes. They shouldn't be very difficult to figure out. The first one is going to be public, and we're going to have to send some information into it. So this is really the trickiest part, is going to be putting the information into the classes and building this out. We're going to take an object and we're going to return a string. So that's going to be our serializer. So what we're going to do is return a string, and we'll name it convert object to string. And it's only giving a red squiggly line because obviously we're not returning anything yet. So it's going to tell you that it's not returning everything on all code paths. But we're going to go right to the next one, and we're going to create this one just to give you an idea. Public, and this time we're going to return an object of some type. So for right now, we're just going to make object, convert string to object. Now our 2 methods are all panned out here. Now we can go in and start working on them. So the first thing we're going to do is finish our introductory here so we have everything we need. Now we're going to need the type to work with. I'm going to do it like this so you understand where we're getting this from. First thing we're going to need is a string. Okay, and we're going to work with a string. We're going to call it a content, and we're going to make sure it's empty. Okay, then we need a variable we're going to call JS for JSON Serializer, and this is going to equal a new. Now this is going to throw you for a loop here at first, but it's a data contract JSON Serializer, and this is going to be type of our object. So the first thing we need to do here is this is red, and if you click on the using thing, it'll give you a using statement for system runtime serialization JSON. So we can add that, and that'll take away your red line. And now we need a type. Now where we're going to get the type from is we're going to pass that type into method up here. Instead of between the 2 brackets, we're going to create 2, the greater than and less than signs. And in between here, we're going to accept in something that we're going to call my object type. When we call this method, we'll have to provide a type there so that it knows what type of object it is. And here, we're going to use that type, my object type, to create our JSON from. The JSON serializer knows what type of object it's going to use to create it to serialize down. Okay, then the next thing we need is a variable, and we're going to call this ms for memory stream, and this will equal new memory stream, and this will give you a red line because it needs a using statement for this also. So if we go here, it'll give you using system IO. So you need to add that, and then the memory stream will work. Now we're going to take our JSON serializer code, and we're going to write object to the memory stream, and it's going to be of type object graph. So this is the object that you're going to create and pass in the object path for that. So what we want to do is pass in something called myObject, but we don't know what type it's going to be when they're passing it in. We passed in a type here, but we didn't say what kind of type that the actual object is that we're sending in yet. So what we need to do is we need to make this myObject type. So it's going to take this object type, and it's going to call it myObject. Okay, so now it knows that whatever passes in between these brackets is going to be an object of myObject type. So that's how it'll know what type of object it is. And down here, we're going to send myObject. So now we sent an object. It's called myObject. It's of whatever type was sent in over here. So if it's a car, this will be the car object type. So this knows that this object that you're sending in is of car object type. I hope that's easy enough to understand. Okay, now we're going to take our memory stream, and we want to position it back to 0. That's so that it begins at the beginning of the stream. So we already wrote the object to a stream, to a JSON stream with the serializer. And now we're going to take that string, we're going to take our pointer and put it back at the beginning so we can read that string out, so we'll be able to send our content back. And we're going to do that by taking another variable, and we're going to call it reader. And it's going to equal a new stream reader. Now in the stream reader here, we're going to put our memory stream. So it's going to take our memory stream and read it. And then we are just going to take our content, and we're going to equal that to the reader.readToEnd. So now it will read that string into our content. And then lastly, all we need to do is return our content. So now we've created a string called content. We've taken a JSON serializer, and we've serialized to whatever object type we sent in, told it was a car, okay? And we serialized that car down to a memory stream, which is just a long string. Then we take our memory stream and we reposition to 0, and we read that out to a string, and then we just return that string back. And that's it. Now we can take any type of object and send it in, and we'll get our string back. So that's the serializer part. Now we need to work on our deserializer. And this one, again, is not real difficult. The most difficult part of it is knowing the lead-in for the method and knowing what to call. Because the first one, we actually sent in myObject type, what we're going to do here is try to keep it the same, and we're going to send back myObject type. Okay, now how is it going to know what object type to send back? Well, because we're going to tell it. When we call it right here, we're going to tell it that whatever my object type is. And then the last thing that we need to send is the string that we're going to convert. We're going to call this my object string, and we need one other string, and that's going to be my object name. Okay, and then I'll show you why we're going to be why we needed the name. Okay, so then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take my object type. We're going to create something called my object. So we're creating an instance of whatever the type of object is. So if the object type is car, we're creating an instance of car. So this would be car 1, car 2, whatever. We're going to call it my object because we don't know if it's a car, or truck, or track, or whatever. So in order to create this, we need to know the object type. So it's my object type, and we're going to use something called activator to create an instance. And that instance is going to be type.getType of my object name. Now the name that you send in is not just any old name. It's actually the name of the actual object that you're going to be converting your string to. So it has to be the complete name. In this case, our namespace is serializer, deserializer. So it would be serializer, deserializer dot, and then whatever the object is if it's created in the main code, which we'll show you. But that's what it's going to do. It's going to actually take the name and it's going to create an instance of that object using the name. Now, we need a variable for our JSON string, and this equals a new data contract JSON serializer. Same one we used before, type of, and here again we just use my object type. Now we need to convert the regular string that we have to a JSON string, and the way we're going to do that is we need to encode it, or break down the encoding. So we need a byte. We're going to create a byte array, and we're going to call it byte array. Simple enough name. And we're going to make this equal to encoding, and we want to use utf8.getBytes, and then we want to get bytes of our myObject string. So now we're actually taking the string that was entered into us, and we're going to encode it. So now we take a variable ms, and that's going to be a new instance of memory stream, and we're going to pass our byte array into there, and now we have a memory stream with our information. So now we take the object that we're going to be working with, our myObject that we created the instance of, and we know that this is going to be of myObject type, the JSON string dot read object from the memory stream. Okay, so now we have written our string that was passed to us. We created an object, an instance of an object right here in our class, and we've taken that object and we've created taken a string and used our JSON serializer to deserialize it by encoding it so that we know what we're reading, the style it's reading, so it knows what to pull off. And then we take that, put it on a memory stream, and build it back into an object. So we read that into the object, and now we have my object, and then all that's left to do is return my object, and now we will return an object. So we have a string that brought in, we told it what kind of object type it was, and we returned an object. So that is our serializer deserializer class, and we're going to take that and we can just close it for the moment. So now we're on our main page, and now we want to see if this is going to work. So this is how we're going to see if it works. First we'll create a variable, and we're just going to call it ser, and this will be new, and this will be our class that we created, so serialize. So now we can work with that. Next we're going to take a variable and we're going to call this C. Actually, before we go any farther, we want to be able to create whatever our object is here, which is what this is going to be. So this is going to be our car. Okay, but for the moment we don't have an object. So let's create one, and we'll just do that. We'll add a class, and we'll make this car, and we'll make this public. And of course, inside car, we want to make property. Remember, prop tab tab. This is the shortcut. And we're just going to make this a string. Tab tab. And we're going to call this make, enter, enter. And that's it. So now we have a car object that has a make in it. Okay. So now here, we'll go variable. Car equals new car, and now we need to put something in it. So car dot make, you can see that on the list, equals, and we'll just use Chevy, and now we know that our car is going to have Chevy listed in it. So now we need to test. So here is our test. We want to take our TB JSON, and we want to see what it's going to convert it to. So we want to see the actual text that we're going to get back if we send that object in. So we'll take that, we'll take the text field, and we'll equal that to, now here's our call statement to convert our object to string. So it's ser, which we created above there, dot, and here you can see convert object to string, and you'll notice it shows you here that you have to send my object type, and my object. We need our greater than and less than sign, and we need to send in what the object type is. So our object type is going to be car. We just want to make sure that our output is a string when it comes back to us. So that's why we add that .toString at the end. So the basic call is ser convert object to string car and then car. Now notice the capitalized car is the object, the lowercase car is this instance of the object. And then, like I said, whatever it returns back, we're just going to make sure is a string so it goes into the text properly. So technically, if you wanted to strip it down even farther, you wouldn't need this. You could leave it right like that. But I always like to cover my bases to make sure I don't end up with stupid errors along the way. So that will make sure that it is a string that it's returning back regardless of the issue. Let's just stop right here for a moment, save this, and run this. Okay, so now we have our program running. We ought to be able to just hit our button. And you'll see here, this is the actual JSON code it created out of our object. Pretty simple, but it used the class, it took the object, it created the text that we needed, and it put it in here. Now you'll notice that there are quotation marks around make and around Chevy, and that's a inclination of JavaScript, which we'll have to deal with a little bit later on in our code. Okay, so now that we see that, we want to see if it's going to take a string and change that string back into an object. So that's what we'll do here. We'll change any JSON string that was created from an object, but you need to know what object, and it needs to be the same exact object to be able to bring it back. So here we're going to start with a string. We'll call this object string. Equal that to, we are taking that and we're going to call that again and make sure it returns back a proper string. And then we're going to make a variable and we'll call this car1 and we'll equal that to new car. And then we'll take our car1 and we'll equal that to our ser dot. This time we're going to convert a string to an object. So we're going to take the string that was returned back to us, and we're going to pretend that it was in a database, because we could save it directly from that string to a database, to a file, whatever we want to do. Pull it back out of the file or the database, and now we've got that string back again. So now we're going to take that string and we want to put it back into the object that we created here, car1. Okay, so we call convert object to string, and we need to tell it what type of object, so it's going to be car. And then we need to enter in the object type, or the two strings, the two strings. First is going to be my object string, and the second is going to be my object name. My object string is just going to be the object string that we created above, so that's where we're passing in the actual string title for the actual object itself. Now here it's the only real tricky part, because we need to have the namespace. So you want to make sure that you take your namespace name, and it's in quotation marks, it's read as a string, dot car. We don't need any parentheses or anything after car. That's just the name of our object. So our object is Serializer deserializer.car. Okay, so now we should essentially have an object called car1. So we want to find out if we can pull the make back from that object. So we'll go to tb object results.text, which is our other text box on our main screen, and we're going to put car in there. So we're going to use car1 dot make dot toString, and that should read out Chevy. So now we took our object, we converted it into a string, and we saw what the string looked like. Now we take that string, we convert it into a string, and we take that string back and we convert that string back to an object, and then we're using that new object to pull out the name of the make. So if this works, when we run our program, we ought to see, when we press our button, we ought to see that string that we created over here, and being that whatever the make is over here should appear over here. So you should see Chevy over here. So let's see. Boom, there we go. So now that works. So now we could take that class and we could put any kind of object into that class that we wanted. We don't have to go back into the class. We don't have to rewrite the class for different things. We can go right here and do this right off the cuff. We can just add a new class, a new object, and we'll call this track. And of course we got to make sure that we make it public. And then we need some kind of a property to read here. prop tab tab string tab tab name, enter enter. Okay. We can even do prop tab tab string tab tab. Let's see. I don't know what else you would really save for track other than the month. I don't know. Maybe that we're just using this as an example. So here we'll add 2. Okay. So now we want to be able to use that serializer in the same way. So here now we would have to change this. Okay. So this would no longer be car. This would be track. And this would no longer be car. It would be track. Now we do our track down here. Track dot name equals island dragway. I think that's the one we used. Oh, that's got to be a string. And track dot month equals December, let's say. Okay. Now here we want to do track. And here we want to do track. Yeah, just to make this a little bit simpler, I think we're going to go like this. Track 1, track 1, track 1, track 1. Okay, and then this one will be track. This one also has to be track 1. And down here we're going to make track 2. Track 2. Track. And track. We're going to be sending name. And then we'll add track 2 dot month. And since we don't want it to come up haphazardly here, maybe we'll do something like track name and track month. And there we go. So it should give us track name, the name of the track, track month, the name of the name of the month of the track. And I believe I shouldn't have any errors. Okay, so now that we have a new track, all we basically did was change it from car to track. This is the first track that we're reading in. This is the string that we're pulling from the first track and we're putting on the second track, and we're reading it back out again. So we hit our button. Now we have month, December, name, Island Dragway. And right here, track name, Island Dragway, track month, December. So there we go, it's working. So now you can take that class and you can put it in any project that you want. And as long as you drop it in there and it's ready to work. You just have to make sure that you call it properly. So you always want to make sure that you are doing your summary work here so that you don't forget. And then put in your notations as to what you need to put in for your my object. Explain it to yourself so that you remember it for later. And that way, the next time you bring this up, you can see right here it brings you up your notations so that you know what you're doing. And that's it. Just make sure that you comment it properly for yourself so you understand what's going on. I hope that answers questions and helps you create a class that you can use to take your objects and put them into a database. This seemed to be a subject that was very hard to find information for some reason online and on MSDN. So I'm hoping that this helps to eliminate your searches. And until next time, have a good day.